Good evening if you are joining us live tonight, and if you're catching us on our YouTube video, good afternoon, good morning, wherever you may be. Thank you for joining us on Train Tuesday. I'm your host, Jim Wigan, and we're going to be talking Genesis tonight. Really glad that you're here to join us tonight on this episode of Train Tuesday. We're going to be talking big power from the 90s all the way until present day. Before we get started, let's do what we always do. Let's do a round of shout outs to our guests that are joining us here live tonight. I have Eugene, Donnie, Delta 9, David Reynolds. I have Chessie and Dave, Greg, and Charles, to name a few. Like I said, we're going to be talking about some big six axle power that started in the 90s and has kind of developed into modern day horsepower as well, with some really interesting paint schemes to talk about tonight. So I want to thank you all for joining us. Let's do one more round of shout outs. We've got Ted, Frederick, Roger, Andrew, Leonard. We've got Derek. Glass is in the house. Ted, Andrews, Derek, Jeffrey, Daniel, Ronald, Wes, Vincent, Robert, and more. I want to thank you all for joining us. If I didn't catch your name, it's not a slight to you. There's just a lot of names there. We've got a lot to talk about tonight, a lot of things to cover. Like I said, we're going to start talking about Genesis tonight. And we're going to be talking about six axle power. We're going to start our trip tonight in the 1990s. And it was about the mid 90s, actually. Now, during the horsepower race of the 1990s, EMD offered an upgradable SD90 Mac. EMD's 6,000 horsepower, 256H prime mover was still being tested for reliability and issues at the time, and UP needed power quickly. To combat this, EMD offered the SD90 with the 43 horsepower 710 prime mover in its place. This was done so in the meantime, while the 256H was being worked on, these locomotives could earn their keep, and then subsequently the 256H prime mover would be ready for install after its testing. Now, unfortunately, the 256H was deemed too problematic and the conversion was never completed. As a result, the Union Pacific classified these locomotives as ST90 43 Max. 43, of course, designating the horsepower of the 710 prime mover. Now, the first one that we see here, these are as delivered, purchased in 1996. This is number 8026. These big brutes were initially used in coal service before ultimately being used in other types of service. But this is how 8026 appeared in 1996 straight from the factory. So for you guys that have been wanting Union Pacific in the Red Sill, here you go. Now we're offering three different numbers in this era of 1996 as delivered. Here's 8037. 8037 also was factory delivered with the "We Will Deliver" slogan. I'm sure some of you that were doing some rail fanning in the 90s remember that slogan. It was kind of a catchy slogan. Rumor has it was devised right after the CNW takeover because there was some congestion. And of course, at that time in our history, there was a little bit of slowdowns in other areas of the railroading world. So Union Pacific came up with that slogan of "We Will Deliver." A third one in the series is 8044. Now, by the mid 2010s, a large batch of these were sold to Norfolk Southern for rebuilding into what we'll be talking about next, the SD70 ACUs. Now, some of the features of these three locomotives that I've shown you thus far are going to all include the Leslie three-chime horn. You'll have the large EMD plow, and you're going to have front ditch lights. These didn't have the rear ditch lights, just the front ditch lights. And again, if you pre-order the Tsunami 2 version, you're going to have the sound file for the Leslie three-chime horn. Now, skipping ahead a little bit to current days, this is 2021. In 2021, CP went to the used locomotive market and purchased a small batch of these X SP40, or I'm sorry, 9043 Max. And they were quickly patched in their UP numbers and released into service. So as you can see, they still have their Union Pacific numbers. Here's 3649, former UP 8181, faded original paint with CP patches. So you know what that means. These are going to be prime for grime. So for you guys that are modeling current day Canadian Pacific, these are a really neat model to add to your roster and add up a little bit of variety in your fleet. Here we have 3712. Again, another former UP unit, number 8229. It's going to have the faded original armor paint, armor yellow paint, but it's going to have these really neatly done CP patches. This is again based on the prototype. These are not legendary liveries. These are real locomotives. All the documentation is there. A quick search on Google, and I'm sure you'll find pictures of one of these three units. Coming up next, the one that's the really impressive. Oh, we're going to skip ahead here, apparently. Unfortunately, I don't have a file for that, and Microsoft is not going to allow that to happen. The third one that you can find on our website is 3747. This is a flag repaint. So it looks just like these, but it still features the flag on the side. So quickly going through the features of the SD9043 Max. And this is just the surface. Since these are our premium Genesis line, these are going to have many features put into them. But here's some of the highlights. These are all going to feature illuminated ground lights, illuminated number boards, etched see-through walkway steps, dual sugar cube speakers, animated roller bearing trucks, something that we haven't offered before with the SD90s. This is brand new on this locomotive. You're going to have the coupler cut levers, rubber MU hoses, train line hoses, of course a see-through cab, full cab interior, walkway tread, windshield wipers, lift rings, wire grab irons, sander lines, and you also have the DCC ready version, which features the quick plug and play technology with a 21-pin NEM connector. So you can purchase this either DCC and sound ready, or you can purchase it with the Tsunami 2 and enjoy those sounds. Now, for you guys that want to know, these are big locomotives. They're big 6-axle locomotives. You're probably wondering, what's the minimum radius on these? Well, technically, you can run these on a minimum radius and HO scale at 18 inches. Now, we recommend 22 inches, but if you got to squeeze one through the 18-inch radius, it can be done with these. So coming up next is the highly anticipated second run of the SD70 ACUs. Now, the second run of the SD70Us is going to include a couple of favorites, and we'll talk about those in a little bit. But let's go into a little bit of background. If you're not aware of the background of the SD70 ACU, in September of 2014, Norfolk Southern purchased 100 ex-Union Pacific ST90 Mac locomotives from EMD Progress Rail to assist in the high-volume traffic that Norfolk Southern was experiencing. Now, as AC traction was being more accepted by the railroad, which previously had relied solely on DC power, the SD90 Max fit the new direction of motor power for the railroad. Starting in 2016, Norfolk Southern began the SD70 ACU capital rebuild program using SD90 Mac units as cores. All the major components were either overhauled or replaced, including an overhaul of the 710 G3C prime mover. Now, most notable in the rebuild is that from the electrical cabinet forward, all new components were used, including a new ACE-style isolated cab with AAR-style control stand. The new electrical cabinets contained Mitsubishi electronics, replacing the SD90 Max original Siemens equipment. Later, starting in 2018, Canadian Pacific announced a plan to acquire 30 SD70 ACUs from the EMD Progress Rail using their laid-up fleet of SD90 Mac locomotives as core units. That number was later increased from 30 to 60. They also acquired two Union Pacific units in 2019. In September of 2019, Canadian Pacific unveiled two heritage painted locomotives in the Tuscan and gray paint schemes. One unit, 7010, using the Canadian Pacific script lettering, and the other unit, 7015, utilizing the Roman font. CP has painted 10 units in this scheme, 5 with the script style and 5 with the Roman style. In November of 2019, CP also painted 5 SD70 ACUs into 5 separate military inspired paint schemes. Now, these units commemorate the Army, Navy, Air Force, and a special tribute locomotive for D Day wearing camouflage and the Allied invasion stripes that were used on June 6, 1944. All Canadian Pacific units have been completed in 2020 and can be found all over the United States, even as far as Mexico. So really neat. And of course, this has had a lot of excitement in the railroad and model railroad community. And coming up first is we've got Canadian Pacific 7020. Now, 7020, like you see here, this wears the North Atlantic Treaty Organization green, or NATO green for short. The Canadian and U.S. armies apply this to their vehicles and equipment whenever they're serving in temperate climates. So Humvees, Abrams, things of that nature are usually painted in this type of green. So Canadian Pacific, they decided to paint this up, much like you would see one of those pieces of equipment painted up. And it's really neat. If you missed the first run of ACUs and the military schemes, you're definitely going to want to pre-order these before Friday, September 30th. So coming up next is 7023. This is a picture that was taken at the shops. This was taken by Adam Meeks, someone that we have worked with very closely at Athearn and Canadian Pacific, in order to make these models as authentic as possible. We got really great feedback on the first round that we did, and we wanted to keep that up. So here's an actual image of 7023, getting the last touches applied to it. And this is an interesting picture for you guys. Now, when we announced these this past Friday, there were some folks that were commenting and saying, you know, these these pieces of art that you're showing, they don't really look like they match the actual unit. Well, a couple of things here. You got to realize the art that we're showing is not going to be representations of the finished project. The finished projects, the finished models will look exactly like the CP Rail versions, because what you see here are the actual color chips that CP Rail provided Athearn in completing these models. So these are straight from CP Rail, and these are what's being used to match our locomotives up to the actual locomotives. And you can see 7022 and 7023's colors right there. Now, as I'm showing you guys this, if you've got some questions, try to save them towards the end of the program. I will get to them. Right now, let's just enjoy some more train facts for the SD70 ACU. Here we've got 7015. This is the one that we were talking about earlier. This is the CP Heritage units with the block or the Roman lettering. We're offering two different road numbers this round in this paint scheme. Now, one of the things as far as details go, even though they're all CP Rail in this first part, doesn't mean they're all the same details. This particular unit, as well as its 7019, are going to include the Heritage nose detail configuration with the blue flag bracket and a high-mounted nose door lock. Here he is, 7019. Really neat paint scheme. And these are pretty much identical to what we offered before, except that it's going to have the Roman type versus the script, which we released before. Now 7025, this is one we've offered the standard paint scheme before. We want to offer them again. 7025 and 7050 are the new monochrome beaver logo is on there, the traditional nose detail configuration. They're also going to have a center mounted nose door lock. They're going to have the blue flag bracket as well. So you got 7025 this time and 7050 standard paint schemes. So you've got two heritage units to purchase from CP. You've also got the heritage with the block or Roman style lettering, and you've also got the standard paint scheme. So we wanted to add some prime for grime in this run, and this was perfect. I mean, these are relatively new compared to when we announced the SD70Us before. This one here, 7271. In mid 2022, Progress Rail purchased a batch of ex Norfolk Southern SD70 ACUs. Some of them had a red PRLX handwritten over the old logo, and some others were simply patched out completely as depicted on our models here. Former Norfolk Southern patch to PRLX, originally UP, forward light gray primer radiator fan, slightly faded body, just as we found what the developers found when doing the research. And a really interesting locomotive that you could add to your fleet. Here's 7330, another former Norfolk Southern patch to PRLX. It was originally a CIT locomotive. It has a full white upper cab brow and a slightly faded body. So if you want some modern day interesting lease power, there you go. That is definitely something that would stand out in your unit trains. Norfolk Southern, we wanted to help you guys out. We're going to offer 3 different road numbers for Norfolk Southern. Here's 7242. And, you know, going back in 2016, Norfolk Southern started that ambitious project using the former UP SD 9043 Max as cores. This is one of those rebuilds that includes the upgraded computers, upgraded electronic brakes, engine and main generator, overall a new EMD cab, again, SD70A style cab. And these are, you know, based on 2016, fresh from the rebuild. Here's 7281 and 7300. So you have 3 different road numbers to choose from with the Norfolk Southern. And again, we're going to talk about just the highlighted features. There's a lot of features in these. If you want to see more, go to athearn.com and go to the new announcements and select ACUs, SD70 ACUs. You can also select those SD90 43 Max for further details. Now, some of the features that we're including on these: illuminated truck lights, illuminated number boards, see-through air brakes, a first for the SD70 ACU, not offered the first time, roller bearing trucks, coupler cut levers, flexible MU hoses, train hoses, of course, a detailed cab, walkway tread, windshield wipers, wire grab irons, lift rings, sander lines, and should you go that route, there is a DCC ready with the 21 pin, or you can go with the Tsunami 2 for the full sound features. And again, just like the 90, I mean, let's not forget, this is basically built on the 90 chassis. This will operate on an 18 radius. That's the bare minimum this locomotive will operate on. We recommend a 22-inch radius, but we know might be some tight spots depending on how big your layout is. You can safely operate it on an 18-inch radius. So there you have it. There's a lot of information there tonight. I know we covered a lot of ground. I want to take a little bit of time now and see what kind of questions you may have about either the SD90 43 Max or the SD70 ACU. So I'm going to go back a little bit here. Jared, it looks like you asked that question earlier, and yes, we We did cover that. Yeah, the Air Force scheme does look sharp. It's kind of a two-tone gray, pretty common for Canadian and American um, aircraft to have that upper surfaces being a dark gull gray, whereas the bottom is a lighter, sometimes referred to as a ghost gray. Yes, they have, and we want to take this moment too to thank CP Rail and Adam Meeks for working with the Athearn crew. Couldn't have been done without them, both the first time and this time as well. We worked very closely with Canadian Pacific and Adam Meeks to get these models out, and we knew as soon as we released these um, 2 years ago and they came in stock last year, people were going to want more of those heritage military units, and we're really happy to bring these in for you guys. Yeah, the heritage units do look really nice. I was always a fan of that maroon and gray. BNSF 9708 says nice. I've seen a couple of the CP script heritage units, but not the block lettering ACUs yet. Let's see what other questions or comments we have. I like this comment. This is neat. Some eccentric modeler is going to turn the PRLX models into a fictional black Norfolk and Western heritage units. If you do, I tip my hat to you. Well, I wouldn't be surprised. They've got something to start with. Randall says he saw a few of these Norfolk Southern ST70 ACUs as run through power on BNSF trains at Thayer. And a lot of good comments. A lot of guys are really, really excited about these. Terry's got a comment. At least they're doing DC ready to help out. Yes, that's true. Everything that we've got that we've shown today, um, especially in the Genesis line, we offer them DCC ready, so you can run them DC if you like, but they're DCC ready, or you can get, like I said, you can go full house Tsunami too. Jim, will these have 4 cube speakers in the DCC versions? No, they'll have dual sugar cube speakers. Dual sugar cube speakers on both the ACU and the SD9043s. A lot of people posting that they've seen them. Um, seen them out there as they've been rail fanning. Brad saying he saw 7015 on its second revenue trip. Paint was a mirror shiny. Yes, I bet it was. Doesn't last long that way, unfortunately. Danny wants to know, will we eventually do CN Heritage? A lot of that depends on which ones we have available tooling for, but it is definitely a possibility. Now, another thing to bring up too, and Dale has reminded me of this, is if there's something that you would like to see produced that we're not currently doing, or a railroad that you think needs some love, go on over to the Athearn website, go to the Contact Us page, and select the product suggestion email. It's Athearn-product suggestions at athearn.com. Go ahead and fill that out. Put your suggestions in there. Now, you won't get a reply necessarily, but that does go straight to development, and we keep that data. And when we have our annual meetings and we try to decide what is going to be the next hottest thing for you guys to put on your railroad, we look at those suggestions. Everything that we come out with every month is driven by you. So Keep in mind, we are watching that email. Let's see. When are the SD90 Max coming this year? If you're talking about the H ones that we announced last year, those are going to be probably closer to the beginning of the year. I don't have an ETA off the top of my head, but right now we've got a lot of shipping delays that are kind of hanging things up. So things that were originally announced to be available in October are going later than what we would like to see. Athearn R&D needs to make maintenance away DCC units. Well, Philip, you know the address. Go ahead and go over to our that email address and send us an email. Greg's asking one of the most popular questions of not only the evening, but probably since we announced these. Will the last CP military unit 6644 be released in the future? Yes, it will. When we first announced the ACUs back in um, late 2020, that was our goal. We came out with the first two military units, and our goal was to do at least 3 runs of the SD70 ACUs. And so that locomotive will be produced, but that will be a future release. We also realized too that it would be a pretty expensive endeavor for folks to purchase all of the military units at once. So we wanted to kind of break that up a little bit, give you guys a break. Let's see. Here's a great question from HO Scale Railfan. He says, unrelated, but will Athearn be doing more surveys for both models and road names in the future? Absolutely. We really appreciate the feedback that we get from the surveys that we send out occasionally. So we will be doing that. Now, recently we had a survey out regarding GP7s that we want to run in a future run. And we get all of those product suggestion emails from you folks, and we collect them and we see what are the top 10. And we'll take that top 10, we'll take a survey, and we'll send that out there. And that really helps us narrow down what we think we should produce. It's based on a popular vote. So absolutely, we'll be doing that in the future. Cody's got an interesting comment here. I'm going to have to look this up. There's a video of the CP Heritage and military units coming fresh through Centralia, Illinois. That sounds like a video that we will need to watch. Dale wants to know any N scale power coming soon. Well, nothing this month, Dale. Stay tuned to our social media. Stay tuned to our broadcasts. Um, we haven't forgotten N scale. In fact, we are still working very hard on our website to get the N scale tab back up so you N scalers can find your products really easily. But yeah, just keep an eye on our social media. You never know what we're going to release. Wes jokingly says, don't forget to put a teapot in the cab of the CP units. Well, that may be true. Now, Wes, do you know what type of tea? If we're going to get that Canadian. A lot of guys pretty happy about the Norfolk Southerns that we're doing. So, you Norfolk Southern guys, you've got something to look forward to. Let's see. I'm just going back a little bit to see if I had missed anything earlier. Here's a good question from Philip. He wants to know Blue Nami options. So, if you don't know what Philip is talking about, recently, within the last month, um, Soundtracks has introduced a new technology, if you will, called the Blue Nami. Now, the Blue Nami is an interface that allows you to use an app, and that is something they've been working on for a number of years, and they finally released it. They made it known to the public at the National Train Show, And of course, we work closely with Soundtracks. So while right now we don't have a definitive answer as to upgrades or future products, including the Blue Nami, I'll let you know this. We are talking with Soundtracks and seeing what kind of possibilities there may be in the future. All right, I've got time for maybe one or two more questions, and then I'm going to let you go back to do some modeling in the workshop and work on your own layouts. Now, everything that I've shown you here today is available for pre-order until Friday, September 30th. So you've got a little bit of time here yet, but you're going to want to get those orders in with your preferred dealer before Friday, September 30th. All right. Well, it looks like we've got some pretty much all these questions wrapped up. I want to thank you all for joining us tonight for Train Tuesday. Again, you can see more about these products on our website at athearn.com. Select the new announcements banner, and you can download the PDF of each one of these models. Stay tuned here as well. If you're watching us from the YouTube channel, do us a favor and like and subscribe. Hit the notification bell for future announcements of videos that will be dropping in. We want to start doing more videos as we go into 2023. And also keep an eye out on social media for new surveys and new little sneak peeks of things that will be coming out before the end of the year. Our next train show is going to be in Milwaukee. We're happy to say that we're going to be back at Train Fest. Train Fest will be back once again, and we will be there showing off some neat stuff, and hope to see you guys there. Until next time, till I see you next time on another Train Tuesday, I want to wish all of you a great evening. Be happy, be healthy, do some good modeling, and above all, everyone, high greens. Good night, everyone.